What's up, and welcome to Clarity for Parents of Athletes, bringing you stories from professional athletes about their parents and how they were raised. My name is Gabe from aclearmind.com. All right, and welcome to episode number 26, the first episode of the new year and new decade. I hope you all had an enjoyable end to 2019 and are ready for a year of abundance in your life. And remember, you are the one responsible for creating abundance, whether it's financial, emotional, social, romantic, whatever that you choose. And the higher that your being vibrates, the easier it becomes to manifest what you want in your life. Now, if you ever need any help with raising your level of consciousness and how to manifest, just reach out to me. I work with individuals and small groups over the phone and also do workshops for teams and parents in person. You can go to my website, aclearmind.com, for more details on how to work with me and exactly what I do. Now, the guest for this episode is Allistair McCaw. He is one of the world's leading figures in human performance, team culture, and leadership. He's soon going to release his fourth book and has already written others titled Becoming a Great Team Player, 7 Keys to Being a Great Coach, and Champion Minded, which is also the name of his podcast and available on Apple Podcast and YouTube. And I follow him on Twitter because he posts some really impactful statements, and I decided to reach out to him and see if he'd be open enough to being a guest on the podcast, which obviously he was, and I appreciate. Now, he also has his own athletic journey, which he talks about in this interview, and of course we discuss what role his parents played on his journey and advice that he has for parents raising athletes today. Now, as usual, I end the episode with my takeaways from the interview, so please stick around and listen to the very end. All right, enjoy. All right, Allistair, thank you so much for being here today. How's everything going down in Florida for you?
It's going well, thank you. Obviously, the winters are a little bit easier here with good weather, so also just nice to have a little bit of cooler weather. Perfect. Can't complain.
Awesome. Well, that's good to hear. So I know you work with a lot of high-level athletes and you do workshops and group talks and you're an author, and I want to hear all about that. But I want to start with the focus on your athletic journey. I know you help others with their athletic journeys, but I want to hear about yours. So if you wouldn't mind going into the Wayback Machine and start when you were a child, what sports you played, where you grew up, all that stuff.
Okay, I think the best question is what sports didn't I play? So, super fortunate. I was brought up in South Africa, which obviously has a very good climate. I was brought up in Johannesburg. That's where I went to school. The schooling system there back in the day, and in fact it is still the same, is really, really geared towards a lot of multi-sports. They encourage you to play as many sports as possible. So a typical schooling day in South Africa would be, sometimes you'd get to school beforehand to play some soccer or play some rugby or whatever it is with your friends before you'd start class at 7 a.m. School would usually finish at about 1, 2 o'clock. We'd have 2 break times where again you'd play sports in between classes. So you can just see where I'm going here. A lot of sports. And then after school would be all the activities laid on. You could choose from a variety of sports. I played 7 sports in a year. Cross country, tennis, rugby, cricket, soccer, you name it, all the sports. And it was just, for me, it was just the best. For me, it was just the best years because, you're with your friends, you're playing lots of sports, you don't know it at the time, but you're just, gaining a lot of benefits there in terms of your socializing, your multi-skills, your abilities to play all sports. So really, really lucky. I started getting a little bit more serious with tennis around the age of 11, 12. I wanted to be a professional player. But coaching was very tough. It was very expensive. I didn't come from a family with a lot of money, so we couldn't afford that. But I did reach a decent level. I reached close on the top 10 in under 14s in the country. Like I said, the financial side was very, very difficult, so I took up running. because that's not expensive. All you need is a pair of running shoes. And worked really hard at that. I became the under 16 South African 5-kilometer champion on the road. And and then I got injured in running, decided to take up some cycling to help with my recovery and my rehab. Thought to myself, well, I like this. Why don't I try a duathlon, which is running and biking, pretty much like triathlon without the swimming. And got hooked on that. Became 2-time South African junior champion, captained the national team, went on to compete in 5 world championships in that sport. So, I really, really, really blessed to have a good sporting career, not many injuries, and I can put that down to playing a lot of sports at a very young age. I didn't have one career-threatening injury. I had a good 10-year career of, like I said, 5 world championships, 29 marathons. Probably people won't believe me here, but I didn't have one injury that kept me out for more than 4 weeks. And I put it down to all those multi-sports.
So you think that cross training really helped you?
Absolutely. I mean, it conditions the body. You just see athletes who've played a few sports. They've got more of an athletic body. They're just more stable. They have more balance. Their joints are stronger. I mean, you can see the difference. And for me, obviously, I didn't realize it at the time playing so many sports as a kid that it would benefit me much later on, because injuries are what get in the way of progressing in sports and getting momentum. So yeah, key factor.
Mm-hmm. So I hear this argument on both sides with cross training, but then you do eventually have to specialize at something if you want to pursue it, especially professionally. Around what age do you think people should start focusing on just the one sport?
Yeah, it's a gray area because it just depends what sport it is. Gymnastics, of course, you need to be at the top at 14. So, that's different. Figure skating, also very, very young as well. But if we're looking at sports, let's just say tennis, golf, soccer, football, whatever, these type of sports, you should, in my opinion, you should only specialize if you are really, one of the best in your age group in the country at probably around about 14. That's more or less the age if you had to push me. I mean, Federer, for example, he was just speaking on TV just a few months ago. I think I posted it up on my Twitter, that he played all sports. He played squash, he played soccer until he was 14, 15. And he said that's what's given him the longevity in his tennis career. He's 30, he's 38 now. He's still in the top 3 in the world. He's probably had one of the best careers, not many injuries. And again, you look at an athlete that played a lot of sports as a kid. Mm-hmm. So it adds up. And that's coming from probably one of the best sports people around, where, even he says, play a lot of sports until at least the age of 14, like he did. And I'm not just saying that because he says that, but in my experience of 25 years of working in the sports performance industry, seeing both sides of it, some kids specializing too early, parents having these, being disillusional, thinking their kid is going to be a professional one day, and they're not even, anywhere near the level at 14, 15. You've got to be realistic as well. We talk about believing in dreams and believe in yourself, but you've also got to be realistic to what your level is at, say, 13, 14 in those sports. You've got to be near the top. You've got to be competing with the best at that age to have a chance of being a good professional athlete later.
Mm-hmm. So, what if somebody's not as blessed as Roger Federer physically? Do you think that's still the same?
Well, welcome to the other 7.9 billion of the world then. Here's the thing, you talk about are champions born or made? And, I believe it's like an 80-20, if you want to call it. You need a certain element to be born into it. Genetics, of course, the right coaching environment, parents that are supportive, putting you in the right environment and so on. And then, of course, it comes down to hard work. Nobody sees the work that a Federer, a Nadal, a Ronaldo, a LeBron James, that they put in. Kobe Bryant was known to put in hours, starting at 4:30 in the morning and finishing at some ridiculous hour. So, you've got to have those qualities. I mean, it's not just talent. You've got to have some talent, but then the rest of it is 80% of the hard work and the journey.
That's great. And I imagine a lot of support along the way. And you mentioned that you didn't have the financial support because your family's situation, but how did your family support you along your journey as an athlete?
Well, here's what's funny is my parents both worked full-time jobs. So they were gone in the morning from 7 and would get home at 7 in the evening. So I was by myself all day. I believe this is what gave me independency. This is what gave me accountability, ownership, all these things that I find today is lacking in a lot of kids. Not all, but most of them, is that they're too protected. There's things are too structured for them. For example, I had to, at the age of 11, 12, organize my own practices, organize my own transport to get there. I'd ride or run or catch a lift with a friend, or, for example, catch a ride with a friend. My parents were never there to see many practices, or I can count on one hand how many times they maybe watched me compete, and I'm thankful for it now. I mean, it's made me who I am, and it made me very independent very early. I learned how to handle situations by myself at a very young age, confrontation, dealing with cheating opponents, dealing with all these elements. So, I'm not saying, hey, parents, don't go to your kids' practices or matches, but if you want to make independent, accountable adults, then it definitely starts in when they're kids, and sports are a great way to do that. Don't be at every practice, don't be at every competition. Because every time they're looking at you, they're dependent on you, and you want to make them independent.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. Parents these days, especially in the US, can be so overly involved, and that's just unfortunately the culture that's built there. And when they're overly involved, they start to look at things, they start to compare their child to other children and that they're viewing either in front of them or even on TV or whatever. And then they start creating this fear that exists within them. And then they say, oh my God, my son or my daughter's not going to be good enough. We need to do something. Let's go talk to the coach. Let's go talk to whoever it is to try and get them in a better situation according to the parent. But I think they're really stifling them compared to the way that you were brought up.
No, absolutely. And you know what? It's not just the United States. It's in other countries today as well. It's the generation we're also dealing with. And of course, this generation have been brought up by the generation before. So whose fault is it really? Is it this generation's, or is it us, the generation that have, that have brought these kids into the world, of how we have brought them up? But for sure, I mean, I saw a tweet this morning by, I can't remember who it was on Twitter. He just said, the difference is that in Europe and Brazil, the kids are playing on the street, and they're, like I said, they're organizing their own practices, and they're sorting out their own quarrels out there. As we're here in the United States, everything's structured, everything's organized. Your kid doesn't get into the team. The parent is calling the coach that evening on the phone, angry because the kid isn't a starter. Then what do? They take the kid to another club or another academy. What does that tell the kid? That when you fail, don't worry, we'll just find somewhere else where you're going to eventually succeed. No, it doesn't teach them. The things that you need in life is that, you're going to fail. You're going to make mistakes. There's going to be adversity. How do you deal with those things? And sport is an excellent way for kids to learn how to deal with adversity and learn how to deal with challenges.
So I know in your work, you help athletes deal with adversity. So what do you do to help them with that aspect?
Well, it depends what age they are. If they're a very young age, obviously you have to involve the parents. The parents are the most important person in their lives, and they should be. So you've got to have a relationship with the parent that you're working with as well, of that kid, to teach them the right things to say at the right time to that child. What do they say to that child on the way to practice? What do they say to that child during practice if they're watching? Hopefully nothing, because it should be the coach who's coaching, not the parent. Encouragement is fine, but encourage everybody. Don't just encourage your kid. I've got certain guidelines of what would be a better parent at, to help their kid is, don't put your kid on a pedestal. Applaud the other team too. Reward effort, not result. These are important things for parents to know.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, this seems like it's a good opportunity to go into one of your books that you've written called Champion Minded. What does champion minded mean, and how do you become champion minded?
Yeah, champion minded was actually a little bit of my own story, so to say, is that I wasn't the most talented kid. I wasn't the most gifted. I didn't have many opportunities to get proper coaching. But one thing I learned very young was if you developed a good attitude, a good work ethic, good effort, you got all the controllables in place of being on time, doing the extra work, all these things. That is what champion minded is about. Is you might not be the most talented kid, the most skilled, but if you're willing to pitch up every day, put in the work, face adversity, overcome challenges, be willing to outwork the rest, that is what champion minded is about. It's about taking your opportunities. It's about making and taking your opportunities. It's about preparing the best. It's about motivating yourself more, because at the end of the day, that's who you have to really motivate, is yourself. It's about having the right mindset. And, champion-minded is about excellence, not just in sports, but in life. What is sports teaching us in life? So that's how the champion-minded book or approach was developed.
Mm-hmm. Now, I think these are all great points, but my experience as a parent to an athlete, that if I were to have said these things, hey, you need to dress like this, talk like this and perform like this, and it would have gone in one ear and out the other. Whereas if you would have talked to my daughter, it would be completely different, even if you said the exact same thing that I said. So how do you think parents can help their child and their children become champion-minded and follow these great aspects that you're talking about?
Well, first of all, you have to be the example as a parent. Is that you've got to be modeling what you're asking of them as well. If you're asking your kid to behave and to have a good attitude and so on, well, then you've got to have that as well. Not just on the sidelines, but in life generally as well. You are that example. But finding the right coaches, finding the right people around your kid that have the right values, the things that you believe in. That's what's definitely going to help your child. So for example, I can particularly think of, I'm not going to name names, but he was a former number 2 in the world in tennis, won a Grand Slam. I'm sure there's some tennis players out there that'll eventually figure out this guy. I worked with his kid, and basically, his kid is now a professional player. And, I said to him, hey, you're a Grand Slam champion. You were number 2 in the world. You beat Andre Agassi. You beat Pete Sampras. You beat all these players. And you're asking me to help your kid. And he says, well, you believe what I believe, but he won't listen to me. And there you go. So if there's a parent who was a Grand Slam champion, well, then this is going to be music to the ears of the parents listening out there, is that no, if a kid whose parent was a Grand Slam champion, a world champion, if he's not listening to him, then, probably your kids aren't going to listen to you all the way in that. So don't take it personally. Just find good people with good values, good ethics, who communicate well, coaches I'm talking, and that's going to be the best way for your kid to learn.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's so important to be a good role model, and I think a lot of parents lose sight of that we want our children to act in a certain way, but we don't act in that way. It's almost like that.
Absolutely. Example.
Yeah.
As parents, sorry, Gabe, as parents, you're leaders. You're leading your kids, so to say. But first of all, you got to learn how to lead yourself. It's the same principle in anything, in coaching, in business, is that the most important person to lead is yourself. That is the example. Your kids are going to be looking to you as the example. And, if you're telling your kids to eat properly and so on, and then you're having a hamburger and fries and so on and so forth, then obviously they're not going to take that example seriously.
Yeah.
In other words, you are the role models of your kids.
Yeah. Man, that's so powerful to hear. That I think so many parents can really start to see that it's more important for me to behave in that way than it is for my children to behave that way.
Yeah, and Gabe, it's not easy. I mean, I'm not a parent, so first of all, I'm going to admit that it's not easy to be a parent. I mean, I work closely with parents. I can just imagine how tough it is. I mean, you want to see your kids succeed. I mean, it's a no-brainer. You want to see your kids succeed. And, it's tough to see your kids fail, or it's tough to see your kids struggle. But, those are the things that are teaching them to be tougher, to let them go through that, to gain grit and resilience, that they become strong. They have fortitude as adults. Those are great opportunities to do that. So, yeah, it's not easy being a parent. You want the best for your kid, and you want to, you're not always going to get it right. Let's just put it that way.
That's for sure. I definitely had my my mistakes along the way. Now you're absolutely right that we want our children to succeed, but sometimes we go about it the wrong way. Now, you've dealt with a lot of high-level athletes. If you don't want to name names, that's definitely fine. But if you do want to name names, go ahead. But how did some of the athletes that you've worked with, how did their parents help them on their journeys? Were there any kind of themes that you saw with their parents?
Yeah, I would say with athletes that have really made it to the top, I'm talking about top 50 in the world, world champions, etc. There's been at least one parent that's been maybe deemed crazy. Okay. Now crazy has a lot of different meanings. Crazy to me can be something different to somebody else, for example. But to do something extraordinary, be it play a sport, play an instrument, whatever, you have to be extreme. There's imbalance. You're going to be different. You're going to be crazy. You're that crazy parent, for example. So, you'll see that there's at least one parent that's going to be deemed a little bit crazy, or maybe even both. So that is one of the areas. And here's the thing: I understand that. So I understand their, in inverted commas, craziness, because to get to the top in anything, entertainment, business, whatever, requires imbalance, requires a lot of, I don't like the word sacrifice because things are choices, but requires a lot of tough decisions, requires a lot of hours, requires a lot of dedication over the top that other people would say you're crazy. That's what it takes. So that is one common denominator to get to the top in anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and in order to be crazy, you have to love your sport.
Absolutely. There's got to be passion. I mean, that has to be to be self-motivated, you've got to have passion and love for what you do. You've got to have a hunger for what you do. There's no way around it. You can only be motivated by others for so long.
Mm-hmm.
And then that wears off, you got to love what you do. It's got to be something, in the top athletes that I've seen that love what they do, they're just constantly thinking about it.
Mm-hmm.
They're switched on all the time. Last week I was in England, and I was with the Liverpool ladies soccer team there who play in the Premiership. And, I was chatting to the coach. They just said, the top level performers were just switched on the whole time. You get home, you're still thinking about it. You're in the shower, you're still thinking about it. You're going to bed, you're still thinking about it. You wake up, you're still thinking about it. That is the dedication and the commitment that it takes to be the best in anything. And it's a very, very tough thing to do.
Yeah. How do you think parents can help their children get to that point, or can they even help them? Does it just have to be the child's decision to get there?
Yeah. Parents need to step back. It needs to be the child's journey. The child needs to decide what they would like to do and what they would want to do. As in, provide the opportunity and then step back. Get the right environment, the right coaches, etc., whatever it be. Here's the thing: not every kid wants to be a champion. So parents need to get this out of their head. It's not every kid wants to be a Grand Slam champion, or at the World Cup, for example. Maybe they just want to play sport and be with their friends. Parents don't get that sometimes, and you know, some of the best athletes in the world started off just playing games and they just wanted to be with their friends. And then it escalated and gained momentum to something else. So, if the parents are involved in the sport from a very, very young age and they're taking them to competition every weekend and they're playing a ridiculous amount of competitions and the parents are always there, it's too much. I can guarantee you that 95% of those kids burn out. And here's what the funny thing I hear is, well, my kid is going to be that 5%. Okay. Well, my kid is going to be that outlier. That is, that's usually sometimes what you hear all the time. And, it's such a pity because what's the stat? More than 70% of kids drop out of sports before the age of 14. How sad is that?
Yeah.
Because of parents, because of pressure, because you know what? When they signed up to play the sport, it was fun. Then all of a sudden they're getting thrown into competition. They're getting thrown into rankings. They're getting thrown into being judged on how they compete. So, as parents, we can lose track, even though I'm not a parent myself, but I've been around this industry and environment for now over 25 years.
That's awesome. Yeah, actually, it's funny that you talk about this, and it's exactly what I released my last episode about it. And it was called "Why Do Children Drop Out of Sports?" And I talk about that exactly what you said, that parents put their children into sports for a specific reason, and it's usually from a place of our heart. We want them to grow and to have fun and to learn. But then as their journey goes, the focus becomes about something else. It comes about how they look, how their child is perceived, how they were perceived as a parent, then about getting on another team, and then scholarships, and then maybe professionally. And even professionals, and I'm sure you've seen it in your field, they lose focus on their heart goal of why they even started playing sports in the first place.
Yeah. I mean, ask any kid why they started playing sport. They're going to say because it was fun. And, it's no wonder that, the kid gets, he gets better or she gets better. And then all of a sudden there's a fitness trainer involved. And then all of a sudden there's other elements involved. And they didn't sign up for that in the beginning. They signed up to go hit a ball or kick a ball or have some fun. And, parents have these, this thing in their mind that the kid's already 10, 11 years old and they're already talking about scholarships and possible schools and so on and so forth, especially here in the United States. It's crazy. It's crazy. I can't tell you, because I consult to a lot of colleges in the United States, but, where kids have, received scholarships, but they absolutely hate what they do. They're just basically trying to live out those days at the school, a college, and get an education, but, they have to play a sport. But they absolutely hate what they do because of all those years of playing that they really didn't enjoy it.
Wow.
And it's sad to see, you want to be enjoying those years in college and playing sports and so on and so forth. In fact, speaking to a lot of college coaches, they really look a lot of the times for athletes that have been late bloomers, athletes that have started their sport a little bit later. So, we have this age of most kids start at say 7, 8 playing a sport, if they're going to be good at say 18, because that 10, if you want to go with the 10-year rule, the 10,000 hours, whatever it may be, by the time they're 18, they go to college. But what was I actually going to say about that? Late bloomers. Sorry, my bad. No is that kids that started at say 11, 12, and they've been able to, they're improving, and they're able to get to that level. They're maybe not the best, but coaches, especially in college, are looking at those kids. Why? Because they're still motivated. They still love the sport. They're still growing. They're still getting better. Instead of the kids that were the best at 12 years old, 13-year-olds, they won everything. Then the other kids maybe got a little bit, maybe they were athletically better at that age. They were coached betterly at that age, but the other kids catch up at 15, 16, either from an athletic point of view, physical point of view, or from a skill point of view, and they start to beat those kids. And those kids aren't used to it because they were always winning when they were 12 and 13 years old. They were the U.S. champion. They were the state champion. They were this and that. And they begin to hate the sport at 15, 16 because they never learned how to lose when they were younger. So again, these are the things that happen of why kids drop out of sports at 16 or 18 or whatever, because early success can be dangerous, because they're winning all the time. They never learned how to lose. And then it really hurts when they're 16, 17. They're getting beat by kids they maybe beat up on when they were 12, 13. And they're just not used to it. They can't handle the adversity. They can't handle the failure because they never have been taught how to fail.
Wow. I want to go back a little bit because I'm really floored that you come in contact with so many athletes, even at the college level, who hate their sport. What do you tell somebody, or how do you work with somebody who tells you that, especially when they're like maybe a sophomore and they still have a couple more years to go?
Yeah, they won't tell you. I mean, they won't tell you. I can see it a mile away of who's enjoying what they're doing. You can see the athletes that are really invested into it. They're very committed into it. It's one of the most frustrating things for coaches as well, because a lot of kids and parents will say the right things to get their kid into the school or the college, and then they get in there and they see that the kid's not motivated at all. They won't tell you, obviously, because out of fear of losing the scholarship, or they don't want to be known as that kid that doesn't really want to be there. So, for example, but your actions will always prove your effort level, or your interest level, should I say. You can't hide that. Your interest level will always be exposed by your commitment level, your effort level.
So how can you help somebody who you see that they're not enjoying themselves? They won't admit it, but how do you help them to try and either break out of that or at least talk about it?
Yeah, I think it gets back to everything with your purpose, your greater purpose, and your reason why. So, I would try and motivate them by saying, look, this is a great opportunity. Maybe this is the last time you're going to compete in the sport. You've worked so hard all your life to get here. You want to finish strong. How do you want to be remembered? What legacy do you want to leave when you leave the school? What do you want to be known for? Somebody that was not committed, wasn't passionate, didn't give their best, or do you want to be known as someone that worked hard, worked for their teammates? Maybe take another way of motivating is maybe take the focus off yourself and becoming the best teammate you can be. My third book, Becoming a Great Team Player, is all about that as well. Is taking the focus off yourself and making others around you better, serving others around you better. That is a great purpose. So there's different ways that you can try and motivate them, because you got to understand that they didn't choose to be like that. Things have panned out, and through experiences in their life and through who knows what they've gone through, trauma, whatever, through their sport. There's a lot of sad stories out there of kids who've been through very, very difficult junior years in their sport, be it by abuse or be it by whatever it may be. So there's a lot of history there. So for you just to say, hey, enjoy your sport, hey, have some fun, there's a lot of history there. So, sometimes you have to go deeper into it, but the main thing is to find a greater purpose for them. And how do you want to be remembered when you leave the school? As someone that worked their hardest, that gave their all for the team. Well, you still have that opportunity. So, that could be one or two ways.
That's awesome. I think parents can ask themselves that same question as well. How do you want to be remembered as a parent to your child? How do you want your child to remember you as a parent? It could be so powerful.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, what does a kid want? They want to be known that they were loved unconditionally by their parents. That is what a kid wants. What does an 11, 12-year-old know? When they, when they win or lose, it's not necessarily about the result. It's about they feel they've let their parent down. So, they look at the reaction of the parent and are they low energy? They feel, that's what makes a kid feel as a failure. So it's so important as a parent to stay level, don't get up too high for the wins. Don't go down too low for the lows. Stay in the middle there. Reward effort, reward attitude, reward the right things, not the wins and the losses. When you reward the right things, the wins and the losses will take care of themselves. That's the best advice I can give to parents there.
That's awesome. Well, you answered one of my big questions that I always ask my guests, so I appreciate that. Now, I know you have a few books. Do you want to let us know a little bit about those, and then also how people can get a hold of you to do anything else that you do?
Yeah, sure. My first book, 7 Keys to Being a Great Coach, is obviously for the coaches out there. So, that's a lot of my experiences and the 7 traits I feel that every great coach needs. The second book was Champion Minded, which is obviously the book we spoke about as well, about maximizing your potential, about being a better person, about learning from your sports. It's a very easy to read book. Probably kids from the age of 12, 13 can read that book. Chapters are very short, they could read a chapter a day, which is 2 pages. And get a message from it. So that's a great book for young athletes, even into college, for example. And then the third book is more for teams, Becoming a Great Team Player. And again, a book for any ages, a book for a kid on a team that can learn how to become a better teammate, support their teammates, improve the culture of the team, for example. So those are the 3 books out at the moment. My 4th book will be coming out early 2020, and that's all about mindset and attitude. So I'm pretty excited about that book.
Awesome. And if people wanted to bring you out to work with their groups, how would they go about doing that?
Sure. They could email me on McCaw Method, MCCAW Method at AOL.com. That's my email. And then my social media, I'm on Twitter at Allistair McCaw. That's with 2 L's in Allistair. Facebook, I have a page which I put some stuff out there, especially for youth sports, motivation. That's Allistair McCaw page. And on Instagram, which is more motivation, is Be Champion Minded.
Awesome. Very good resources. Allistair, I know you're a busy man, so I appreciate you spending time with us today, and keep doing what you're doing. Best wishes to you in the future and everything that you do.
Awesome stuff, Gabe. I appreciate it, and all the best with the podcast and everything else.
So what were your biggest takeaways? Allistair has worked with numerous athletes over his 25 years in the industry, so naturally he's going to have a lot of amazing advice, which he did in the interview. So I'll just try and focus on 1 or 2 of those from the interview that impacted me the most. Now, I'm going to paraphrase here, but one of them is when Allistair said, if you want to make independent and accountable adults, it starts in childhood, and that parents should want to make them independent. And I think most parents can agree that making their children become independent and accountable adults is a goal for them as a parent. But what can often happen is parents can actually do the opposite of that intention, unconsciously, of course. It's natural to want to help our children when it comes from our heart, but there's always the other place of our being where helping our children can come from, which is our ego. And if you might remember from previous episodes, that fear is the fuel of the ego, or as Master Yoda says, is the path to the dark side. And when helping our children is driven by an unconscious or conscious fear, parents can often blame coaches, referees, teammates, or even their children themselves. We can lose sight of the fact that children are still learning and making mistakes, and that's actually the best way to learn. It's much easier in life to learn and grow when we lose a game or make mistakes in the sporting arena than it is when we win or have success. When we view through the lens of fear, we can see quote-unquote failures our children are having as defining them that way. So naturally, we don't want them to make mistakes. When we don't want them to make mistakes, we can overhelp and do more for them instead of letting them figure out life on their own. Now, of course, it's important to help children as well. I'm not condoning never helping and making their journey more difficult than it naturally is. There's always that balance of helping, but not too much. The big key is to tune into oneself and to slow down and feel what emotions and what thoughts come up. If we tune into the possibility that we might be helping our children because it might make us look more favorable in their eyes, or that we're afraid that they will think we're a bad parent if we don't help them, that's a key indicator that our ego has taken over. Now remember, any negative thought or uncomfortable feeling comes from the feeling that we lack control of a situation, or fear that we will lose some sort of security, or fear that we won't have acceptance from our child or from others. And all three of those categories can only be fulfilled within us and not from someone or something outside of us. That's the inside-out reality that exists. The more we realize we don't have to search for anything outside of us to make us whole, the more we know that our children might be upset because we're not helping them with something, and that not helping them with certain things is still the best option for them as well. That's how you build accountability. For those of you who listened to the episode I did with Mohini Bhardwaj, you might remember her parents cut her off financially when she decided to come out of retirement and try and make the next Olympics with USA Gymnastics. She had to work hard both in and out of the gym in order to make it, which she did. Now, Allistair went through a very similar experience with his family. They couldn't support him financially or even provide consistent transportation to training. He had to rely on himself to find rides and to schedule training. Now, that's what builds independence and accountability. How many of you are comfortable with letting your child truly take the reins of their sporting journey? Now, of course, it depends on the child's age, but I think few parents are comfortable with just letting go of control and leaving it up to their child to organize rides and individual training if it's about choice. Now, some parents, especially single parents who are too busy with work, have no choice but to let their child take the wheel of their athletic journey. But I'm talking about the ones who do have a choice. Now, of course, parents love to watch their child. I know I love to observe my son playing sports and doing music and anything else that he does, but I know if I'm too involved, it becomes more about me than it does about him. And it can be tough as a parent not to step in because we want to make sure our child reaches his or her potential. But stepping in too much comes at a cost. When we live with the fear that our child won't reach his or her quote-unquote potential, it essentially means that we don't think they're good enough or won't be good enough, or that we're not good enough as a parent. And when we believe that, either on a conscious or unconscious level, we take too much control. Now remember what Allistair said in the interview. Children today are too protected and things are too structured for them. When we're overprotective or over-controlling, we restrict the openness children crave to have in their life. That's what stunts them from reaching their potential. The development of a child is more reliant on their parents' consciousness than anyone or anything else. Any coach, any teammate, any fans, anything. So if you raise your consciousness and your child flourishes. If you want some guidance with doing that, reach out to me. Reach out to Allistair. Reach out to someone who has a high vibe and is dedicated to helping others. Allistair's contact info is in the episode description, and as always, you can get in touch with me at my website, aclearmind.com, or email me directly, gabe@aclearmind.com. Thanks so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed. Much love to you and many blessings.